Hello.
Eleanor here.
Trevor here.
From Topocata. We're an animation studio based in Hertford, UK, and we specialise in our own type of animation, which is paper cutout with motion capture.
Motion capture, yeah. You go.
I'm adding a bit every time. I just add a little bit more.
Yeah, it's going to be about 2 hours long by the time you finish.
Anyway,
Excellent.
Thank you very much for joining us.
Yes, on our 9th podcast, I think. Even though I've written down 8.
Right, just to
I
confuse
got it
me.
wrong. Yeah. What are we talking about today, Anna?
We are talking about creative block.
Yeah, it's a bit like writer's block,
But creative.
creative. Not saying writers aren't creative. Okay.
No, don't say that. No. So creative block and kind of how ideas pop up
Yes.
or don't. How you can help.
Yeah. So, how you can help with those times when you're really struggling to come up with, because sometimes you get a brief from a client and you sit there in front of a blank screen or a blank bit of paper.
Well, the blank screen, that is one trigger that I need to step away from a computer, basically.
That's how you deal with it.
Yes. Movement is a movement away from a computer.
Yeah, I think a lot of people.
We've talked about this before.
Yeah. It's true, because, when I see the sort of blood drain from your face when you're staring at the computer and, it's not your happy place sometimes, is it?
No, but making, doing, moving and walking is, and many people actually in the shower. I've heard that quite a lot. Ideas popping up in the shower.
Okay. Have you?
I have. I don't know how
It's not the most common one, but actually that probably is true. I have to say, when I come out the shower sometimes, I do sort of write some notes.
You've had a brilliant idea.
Yeah. It's sort of the eureka moment, but in
and I think that's
sort of
because your brain is sort of switched into some kind of ease. There's no pressure.
That's just
You're just sort of musing, thinking about stuff,
It can be the most difficult thing in the world, can't it? When you're actually sitting there and you have to come up with something to say, actually, I'm going to step away. Because that seems like very counterintuitive.
But it works, yeah.
But it works.
Definitely.
And you'll spend a lot less time when you're doing the activity and potentially have that sort of unblock that sort of creative stalemate when you're doing something active than if you're sitting there. Because you could sit there quite a while.
Quite a while. So there is a study about walking from Stanford in the US, carried out in 2014, and it was obviously scientifically based.
Right, yes.
And they found that a person's creative output increased by an average of 60% while walking. And that's not the environment, but the action of walking.
So the activity itself.
Yes,
yeah, because I think it's also been said that you can get inspired by things you actually see when you're out on your walk.
Yes.
Weirdly enough, even if they're unconnected, they can still spark ideas. But you're saying the actual physical action of walking itself.
Yeah. And I think it's sort of to do with the kind of release, and the concentration is dispersed, basically.
Yeah,
it's kind of a...
That sort of angst and anxiety about trying to struggle to find an idea.
Yeah, the sort of relaxation. But you found a study...
Yeah, this is much earlier. This is 1926. There was a study by Graham Wallace, who was one of the co-founders of the London School of Economics. He talked about the incubation effect, which is basically that ideas, if you're trying to think of something, like if you're trying to think of a name, for instance, is a very sort of basic example, you're going to struggle. It's much better to actually relax your mind and do something else. And then it's much more likely to come into your head than if you really struggle. There's something in that whole process of trying, especially under pressure, that is not conducive with creative thought at all.
Talking about finding names, though, we quite often come up with it between us. So if I can remember the first name, you immediately follow with the second, and vice versa.
Yes, and that's another aspect of coming up with creative ideas.
Having the right group of people.
Yeah, to bounce off.
Yeah. And maybe not too many people, but it's definitely a thing. Like if you can feel like you can be open and say anything and not feel silly or undermined or anything. Yeah.
Not me then. I think there was a story with Hitchcock, wasn't there? And one of his writers saying that if they worked with Hitchcock and they were having trouble coming up with what the next scene was going to be, that they decided to talk about other stuff.
I think
that was Hitchcock's decision.
Yeah, he just went off on a story that's completely unconnected.
Yeah.
And it's only after they realised what he was doing that it wasn't too annoying for them.
Yeah, that actually helped. Once they went back, the ideas came to them.
Yeah, yeah.
Because their brain had gone on this sort of mental walk, if you like.
But that's the other thing, isn't it? Finding if you can't go out on a walk, making sure you have a place, like a space, that you know you're going to go in and for a set amount of time. So you haven't got pressures of the phone or interruptions or anything else like that. We've spoken about interruptions before, haven't we?
Yes, we have.
And how long it takes your brain to get back into the sort of run of what you're meant to be thinking about.
Yes.
And also giving yourself enough time.
Yeah, so once you have actually sort of unblocked their creativity, you do have to have the space to be able to then pursue that, don't you?
Yeah, and keep going with it as well. And if they seem silly ideas, then maybe they're sort of stepping stone type ideas.
Yeah.
And you'll get to juxtapose things that have new meanings, and then,
absolutely. It's like
rolls.
Yeah, it's almost like your brain is playing, giving it that space to come up with wild stuff. That's that sort of open state. I think that's something John Cleese talked about. He did some talk. It wasn't a TED talk, but something like that.
No.
I'll put a link in the description to all these things that we've mentioned. But he was talking about an open state and a closed state of mind. And that obviously creative ideas, you need to be in an open state of mind. And that open state of mind is a state of play, a state of experimentation, almost childlike. That you're allowed to make mistakes and you're allowed to explore. Nothing is wrong in an open state.
Of course, he talked about humour as well.
And humour, yeah. So there is this just absolute joyful kind of play state.
Enjoyment. I think that's a key thing as well. You have to be
absolutely
enjoying.
But once you've actually got your idea,
recognising it, and then you must sort of go into what he calls the closed state, which is where you are serious and you're dedicated and focused, and you get on with what you. Well, you work out, because I've had this before now. In sort of my past career, people coming up and saying, "Oh, I had that idea." It was when I was doing my class artwork, and I've had this idea before. Yeah. And the difference is, I did it. I thought it up, and I thought that would be great. What if?
You implemented
and then I actually managed to find a way of actually doing it.
Yes.
And then doing it.
Yeah.
So there is a difference between because also I was listening to Seth Godin the other day, and he was talking about a guy who set up a website giving away a brilliant idea every day.
Seth Godin's a marketing guru, isn't he?
Yes. He's very
good. We'll put a link to him as well.
Yeah. And the point of that was to show that there are a lot of ideas out there. And so you can't be precious about it, but you need to recognise a really good one.
Yes.
And so that's almost the more important, is actually working out when you've got a good idea and then being able to implement it.
Yes. And another thing I suppose that helps us is when we actually go and explore. I mean, not just walking, but actually going to exhibitions. Going through, I mean, we've got a library of reference and books and things, haven't we?
Yeah.
But that in itself has really helped us, especially in the beginning. But every time we have to remember that we need to go back and look at reference.
And but not just look at, actually go and see exhibitions and stuff like that. Because and also...
It doesn't have to be related, does it?
Yeah, that's what I was going to say.
Yeah, it's, I mean, I think... When we started, even before we started working out what our style was going to be, if it was that focused, we went to a folk art exhibition.
Yeah, it's a folk art, and that was 2014 as well, actually, in Tate, Britain.
Yes.
And it was fantastic. And the nature of that, even folk art, there's all sorts of things there, like a big straw man.
Big straw man, yes, we remember that. And then there was
amazing tapestries.
They had paintings where they'd actually, of a pig or something, but the way they'd actually written into the painting as well. So that was really interesting juxtapositions, and the way that the artwork had tarnished over time. But there was such a varied objects. So it wasn't just, we think, well, if we want inspiration and we're going to do animation, we should go to an animation exhibition. But that's the last place you should go, really.
Yeah.
Especially at the early stages.
Yeah, no, it was fantastic exhibition. And the other one that we went to during that same time was Pollock's Toy Museum.
Yeah.
Which sadly is now closed. There is still a shop in Covent Garden.
There's still a shop in Covent Garden, that's been there for a long time.
Yeah, it's not actually connected.
No, oh right. Okay.
But it's different people running them.
I think they're trying to get the toy museum back as well.
Yeah.
But as yet not.
But they're doing they did a pop-up in Croydon, I think, last year.
Oh, did they?
Yeah.
Right.
So I think they're looking for a new space, but it used to be up in Fitzrovia in London.
Yeah, I'll put a link because there'll still be imagery about.
They've got a website.
Yeah.
But again, it's all sorts of stuff in there from all the ages, and it's someone else's imagination, just thinking something out, what if, and then doing something about it and making it. And it was just, there's some brilliant stuff in there.
There was, yeah.
Madness, eccentric, fantastic.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things that really captured our imagination was the room that they had, which was full of paper theatres, Victorian paper theatres, which
that made a big impression.
Some of them are quite sort of extravagant and detailed, and that obviously, because now we're doing a cutout style, that's kind of had its influence in that way.
Yeah.
But yes, definitely to get out and about. I think people are aware of that, but it's very difficult when you're trying to cram to get something done.
Yeah.
To say, actually, I'm going to take a step back.
Yeah, I think that's one of the main things. Although you may be under pressure, you actually have to give yourself permission to relax and be at ease and have it so you are actually going to enjoy the process.
Yes.
And you're way more likely to come up with something.
To actually come up with something, yeah. And take a camera with you. I mean, obviously everyone's got one on their phone now, but I don't know. There's something about actually taking a proper camera. We've been to some fantastic places around the world where just the architecture and in some of the museums there as well, we've taken lots of photographs of different places that have inspired our work. So,
yeah, one that comes to mind is Lisbon, actually. We went to Lisbon a few years ago and went to Sintra, which is like a...
Oh, that's amazing, yeah.
It's a town near Lisbon. Not too far.
Yeah.
And there's just incredible buildings there.
There's sort of grottos and follies and...
Yeah, so the Victorian type folly.
Yes. And there was Penna Palace, which was like something out of Chitty Chitty Bang Bang. It was all sorts of weird shapes and colours. And
yeah.
So all of that is kind of filtered into things that we do. And whenever we're looking at a new project, if you're using reference, it's always going to be a richer world that you create, I guess.
Yeah.
Because you're using things that have, proper inspiration.
Yeah.
Rather than trying to rely on you inventing it from scratch.
Yeah, yeah.
We're going to put a link to all the little bits of inspiration we've got, and we'd like to hear your sort of thoughts on how you get inspired.
Yeah. Where do you go?
Yeah, where do you go, and how do you unblock creative block? And put comments in the description on our blog. I'll put a link in the description.
Yes.
But if you're listening it to on any of the other services, you can click the link in the description and get to our blog where you can make comments.
That would be
nice
fantastic.
Ones, of course.
nice ones, of course. But no, I think that would be really interesting to hear what other people get up to.
Yes. Well, thank you very much for listening.
Thank you.
We'll say goodbye.
And hopefully see you again.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay,
Goodbye.
thanks and bye.
Bye.